Okay, we have this streamed and recorded. Let me share my screen with the agenda. And do you expect Pritesh to join, or you don't know?
He usually does. Let me just ping him.
Okay. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. So good. Then we have a couple of things that actually are on the agenda. At our names, and we can get actually going through those things.
Yeah, that's it.
So notation V1 PR status. So they made progress. Let me open the view so we can take a look. What is the progress? So we still have some items that are in to do. Hey, Roy. So we have the release management and naming. Those are two things that we can talk. They are part of the agenda. Signature specification. This is another spec item that we still need reviews. Security best practices for downloading and installing. This is on the website. Security best practices for deployment. This is on the website. And notation threat model. So on the first kind of three, like I would like to follow them in the overall kind of discussion about naming and what we would like to do there. On the best practices, I believe they're just requesting our reviews. So if I may ask you and Pritesh to go and take a look at those so we can go and either provide the feedback to Zach, the doc writer, or we can merge them. That will be great. So would you mind taking care of that from your side, Samir?
Yeah, I can look at them today. I think what I'm struggling with GitHub is there's so many things that I get that we get pinged on, and there's not a single place to go and look at all the reviews open. If you know it, let me know. Otherwise, I respond to things you bring up in this meeting.
The way I look at this is actually I look at my notifications, right? And I look at all the notifications that I get for each individual project.
Oh, so that's a good way. Okay, I will try to use that mechanism. Yeah. Otherwise, I have to go through my emails to see where I was pinged. Okay, this is better. Thank you.
So if you go and look at the notifications, you'll see for each individual project, like at least what you are supposed to be involved in. Some of the times, actually, this is notification that the PR got merged. And yeah, that's okay. I know that. But like also, if you're tagged, if you are assigned to do something, everything comes here.
Lovely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So coming back to this thing, create a notation threat model. My expectation was that this is done as part of the security audit, right? Do we need to do something else, or?
I believe it was done as part of the security model, but because that's what we submitted, and that's what called out as a reference by the external party looking at it. But I think there were some updates. We never, it was work in progress that we did not officially close. I think we just need to just officially close this because there were just edits as I remember, and clarifying what is within the trust boundary or not.
Okay.
So I do think we need to close it, but it was all clarifications as I read them.
Okay. I will go and review that. So this needs to be kind of in the context of the security audit. So let's like those three, I think we can close relatively soon, today, tomorrow.
Okay.
Let's put us a goal to have them closed before Monday.
Okay.
So overhaul README MDs. So all this, like, can we table the whole kind of naming and README's conversation to the next topic? Release management and the release guidelines. So I believe, so release management and the release guidelines are, is there any way actually I can order those topic? Apparently not. This was like what we discussed with Pritesh last time, right? Maybe those are things I'll leave this to the engineers actually to kind of close, and having in mind that Pritesh is the release manager right now. I'll rely mostly on him to weigh in on those documents because he's doing the release. So if you can ping him and say, hey, take a look at those. Is there something missing? So we can eventually, I am not sure whether we'll be able to close that before the release though. So I would wait until the last moment before we actually push the release of everything to close those two, because we may need to do updates to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fair. Let's keep it here in the 1.0 milestones, and we can make a call later.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Let me just add Roy and hi, Rosalind. How are you?
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, are you new to the Notary project community or?
Okay, I am the LFX mentee for the Notary documentation project.
Oh, okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are actually going through some work items for our release, just to let you know. Some of those include documentation. So eventually you can take a look. We have documenting security. So this eventually for onboarding you on the documentation for Notary, that will be helpful for you.
Okay, I will have a look at that.
Back to us, Samir. Blog post, I believe that is in progress, and there is a ask for us to review that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a must-have to announce so that people can see a consolidated view. I think we have done so many releases to just bring it all together in one summary is the right ask here.
So, Notary project specification and signature specification.
Yep.
So I think the one item is to finish the update, and that may need also some changes in terminology there. And the other one is just to kind of push a release of that.
Yeah, and this might also engender some renaming things as well as we look through those specifications to make sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And publish security audit reports and Notary website. That is okay. It seems that the majority of the things here that I see are mostly governance and documentation stuff. I do not see any code changes.
Correct, because the only one code change was that fix for notation login logout, which I believe was completed. I think if you look at the closed item, you will see that if you modify the filter to say status done, like up there, yeah. And now search for login, I guess you would probably see that. Or right there, 394 desktop.exe was there. Right there, 394.
394, yeah. That's the only item that we had, which is code item for the release. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just add to the notes. So not that today.
I think we should be explicit. There was just one code fix. I think if we, instead of saying all code related, let's just say there was just one. There was just one. I think that will be better. There's just one fix, only one code fix, and you can probably link back to that issue.
link back to that.
Yeah.
And that was 394. Okay. Security doc PRs. Okay, yeah, those are, we looked at the notation naming. So I bring this as actually completely.
Yeah, Pritesh couldn't join today, so I'll ping him later. Yeah.
Okay. So the two security items, we talk about that checklist for the management, that is Pritesh. Everything else is like governance stuff that will fall under the naming. Create a new repo for setup notation. I kind of missed that conversation on Monday. So we would like to have, I remember we had a repo for the GitHub action, right? Or didn't we?
No, I think we agreed to create that repo. I think that repo is not there yet. We agreed to create
okay.
We can even create the repo after 1.0 so that we can release 1.0 and then create that repos. Otherwise, you'll have to go back and change all their documents again to say which repos are currently open or available under the Notary project.
Where that is actually under the issues, right?
I believe so.
Create a new sub project for HashiCorp. So that is not.
Yeah, let me find it. I saw
issue 30. Yes, there it is. Create a repository for notation GitHub action. I have myself, you, Pritesh.
Yeah, I think Yi summarized it at the bottom that we have 6 out of 9 maintainers agree to this.
I think we can just go ahead and.
Yeah, I think the only thing I will say is if we create it now, we'll have to make a pass at updating all our documents to reflect this repo as part of 1.0.0. So before we create it,
makes sense. Should we just say let's actually do this after the 1.0 release?
Yeah, I will agree with that. I don't see a reason to must have it at 1.0. It will be nice, but given the work we want to do.
Okay.
That's a very good tool you have.
Yeah. Okay, so we are agreeing that we'll actually hold on creation of this until after the release. For the GitHub action.
Should we apply the same logic to the one for the HashiCorp because we have approved to create the HashiCorp plugin?
I think the HashiCorp is already created.
Oh.
I don't think we can. So I saw the HashiCorp already available. If you go to the project, HashiCorp Vault is already available.
Okay. So we have to update our docs.
Yes. So we need to update the docs, and actually that's a we need to update the docs with information about the HashiCorp repo, as well as the repo README. That's another thing. And nominate Zach as maintainer for Notary Project Dev. I think we had, let me go back, GitHub issues. We have actually only 2 nominations. So yeah, we're looking maybe you, Samir, and Pritesh, and I believe we need Nias and Milind. I believe you are not actually.
Yeah, I'm not a maintainer of this repo.
Then we need Pritesh, Nias, and Milind. If you can ping them for this nomination, please. Okay. So where are the notes? And Milind. Okay, I think this is kind of the tactical stuff, and the remaining 40 minutes we can spend on naming and all the things that we need to do to actually get the governance ready before the 1.0 release. You mentioned that you haven't had a chance to look through my PR, which I think. Oh,
no, actually, I did. I could only do it this morning, so you will have no chance to look at my comments back. But it was a well-written change, and I think it does clear things. However,
they are. Just to give you some feedback, there is still some feedback that we need to provide more clarity around that. Let me kind of give you. I've been talking with Emily, who was kind of submitting all this feedback on my PR, on E's PR, and so on. One of the things that we are really kind of suffering is not documented decisions on all the names that we are using, right? So, and that's by no fault for 2 of us at least, right? Because those things happened long time ago. We were not part of the maintainers. Her suggestion is really to document these things and have them actually approved and agreed upon as a community. So we have like a bunch of options. I will look at your comments later today on my PR. She agrees that also that adds some clarity, but there's still confusion, like what is the difference between Notary and Notary Project, right? A lot of people are thinking that Notary Project is actually the next incarnation of Notary, which, and it's hard for us to kind of really communicate that Notary Project actually encompasses Notary as well as notation, and eventually in the future we'll have other things. The other big kind of confusion, and I think you mentioned that in the past, is the use of Notary Project as a repository, right? Because people expected that actually Notary is one repository, which is kind of the first implementation of Notary with the tough kind of tight implementation, and Notary Project is the next implementation. And they go inside and they see no code, but other stuff. So the suggestion is that really to clean up not only the terminology, but also the actual repositories and have them more clearly defined what it is. So my thoughts on that, and I'm looking kind of to feedback on this is we can first we really need to kind of update the readmes on each repository and describe what it is, right? Starting with my PR, we can do that. There is still kind of the struggle with the Notary project repository. So my proposal maybe would be to go and eventually retire that repository. So we need to introduce a process for retiring, but to take all the information from it, which is important to us, which is like specs, reports, and figure out what is the best place to actually have them placed. So my thoughts was, if we rename or actually create a new repository, which is not named Notary project, but is named specifications, like we can put the specifications and eventually requirements. And I think we had, I don't know where it is, scenarios. So we can use that only for kind of this, and we can clearly say this repository is only for specifications, requirements, and scenarios, and that is the purpose of repository. Doesn't say Notary, doesn't say Notary project. It's very clearly defined what it is. And there is no expectation that there is a code there that replaces any of the tools that we are working on. Does that kind of make sense to you?
Yeah, I think conceptually it just aligns, it removes the confusion. But even after we retire this, I think we will tell people that this has been retired in favor of blah. So that will be fine. I don't know if it's possible to rename it in place, so we don't have to retire it. Can we not rename a repo? And I don't know that about GitHub.
I believe we cannot, because even if we rename it, like one of the concerns with kind of retiring it, actually renaming it, I have is breaking a lot of links. While when we retire it, we can put it in archive and we don't need to delete the repository. So all the existing links will work, but we'll have a big banner says this repository is retired and not used anymore. And it is kept only for historical purposes.
Yeah, okay. If that is the constraint, then retiring and creating a new repo seems to be the right answer there.
So one question I have around this thing, because like if we create a spec repository, right? So we just take this folder and promote it to a repository, right?
Yeah.
We may need to also figure out what to do with the reports, the security reports. My thought was, if we, having in mind that GitHub is actually the main repository, so we can eventually shove them under the GitHub repository. And I'm kind of looking for feedback. Do we want to keep it together with the specs, or do we want to actually, and honestly, I don't have a preference for that.
I would say the first testing is on the implementation. So it shouldn't go in the specs. I would think it should probably go where the implementation is. And I know we have the first testing done for more than one thing. For more than one repo. Yeah.
Yes, that is the first testing is done on more than one repo, right? And we don't want to replicate it in each individual repo. So that's why we need to have some kind of more common repository. And my first thought is, that's why my first thought is to put it in the .github repository.
Let me be the devil's advocate on that one, right? So the first repository, or if you open that back up, there's not a lot of content. Even if we duplicate it, that is where people will expect to find it.
What do you mean the first repository?
Sorry, I meant the code repository. For example, for the fuzz, I did not mean first. I meant fuzz, right? The fuzz reports.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah.
So I think people will normally look to expect to find it. And correct me if I'm wrong there. I will think if I'm a developer, I'm using a code repo, I will expect to see the fuzzing report available in that code repo itself. So even if you duplicate the content, that's fine. But it's
how about we link from the README?
We link from the README.
Yeah, in the README itself, we can have a security section, and we can link from the README to the report and say, if you are interested about first reports for notation, and I'm right, actually, yeah, I'm in notation right now. So if you're interested for the first report, here is the link to the first report. And of course that will, actually we can link directly to the PDF, so they don't even need to know that it is in the .github repository.
Yeah. So can you show me the current content of the of those repo today? Like the what's the content?
Notary project. So right now we have only one thing, which is security reports fuzzing. So the idea was that we have under security, and I don't know why it's not loading my browser. That's interesting. Let's start over.
It's just saying the path skips through empty. It says the path skips through empty directories. It directly went into the fuzzing repo because the other directories above it were empty, which is fine.
I think my browser is failing because I cannot.
Let me check on my end.
Okay, let me try to restart. I have not restarted this browser for, I don't know, months, most probably. So I think it's about time this to happen.
Yeah. So I was
maybe
able
restarting
to
the machine. Yeah, I think it's my problem. So yeah, I'll restart the whole machine after that.
Because it is just one report. Let me sleep over it. But I think my counter proposal will be, if users expect to see the security related directories or subfolders inside the code repo itself, then that's the right place to put it, so that in the future, if we add one more security report, then it directly goes there, versus putting it in the README and putting it in a central place. There's not much content that we will be duplicating. Even if it is the same report in 3 repos, it's fine.
We actually will have second report, which is kind of again for 2 or 3 repos, which is the security audit that we have. And the idea is that actually we have such security audits all on a regular basis. So the amount of content will be duplicated. And I think that more central repository will be more applicable, because then if I know I want to look for security for the whole project, I know that one place and I don't need to go and this is actually one additional feedback that we got, that there is information in too many repositories. Like if you go in right now in Notary project, so there is information right now in GitHub, in Notary project, and in the Notary repository, which is relevant for people to getting the context, right? So if we centralize this in, let's say, the GitHub repository, it will be better. That's kind of, but yeah, as you said, let's sleep on it. As I said, I'm not married with that. It's just, but I guess we agree that. Sorry, I'm not sharing my screen.
But you're going to get security reports per version, right? As we
hopefully.
Go forward. Right. So
yeah,
you got to set this up so that we have it different versions as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. So let's, as you said, Samir, let's think through that. We can bring this again on Monday.
Yeah.
and create spec. But so coming back, we agree that the specifications repository will be only for specifications, requirements, and scenarios. Nothing else will be put there. Does that make sense?
It does, but let me ask a question there. So these specifications, will they cover specifications for any code repo that we bring in? For example, the GitHub action will be a code repo. The HashiCorp will be a code repo. So will we say these specifications apply to any code repo going in, or sorry, for any repo, or it's only for the yeah, I'm struggling with that as to how will we tell users.
That is actually a very good question. Maybe so, like, because you asked this question, right? I was thinking of specifications, more of like really specifications of the signature, right? Things that can be used by external, not the actual specification how the code will work, if that makes sense.
It does. I think what you're saying is, for example, for notation repo, there is a spec folder in the notation repo as well for the notation CLI specs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So these specifications apply to cross repo specifications then.
Yes, but it is a good question. Yeah.
Let me ask it differently.
Okay.
Let me maybe Roy can look at it, right? So Roy is probably thinking ahead about the current technical thing we are in. 3 years out, we have added a lot more repos for the overall for benefiting customers' software supply chain security needs, and we have created new specifications for whether it's public transparency logs or whatever as to how people want to manage their public and private artifacts. Will those specifications require to be published here, or they can go in some other repos somewhere else? Like I'm thinking about SCITT in particular.
Right. If we were to make a Skit product on top of what we have built for Notary, it would be different than what we have in the Skit working group right now. It's just building blocks. But yeah, it's an interesting question, is if the working group goes, hey, here's the standard APIs and so forth, I think the implementation or the broader threat model and security posturing would belong in our repo, and we would point to say, hey, we're implementing this spec from over here in the IETF working group. I would expect to see the security posturing and threat models written either in the implementation or generically across the specifications, things to look for.
Okay, that answers it.
So just to understand, what you, Roy, are saying that we should put them in this central repository. Is that correct? Or
I think so. I think we basically need to say, hey, we have to come up with a naming scheme and a directory structure for having different versions from the same security reviewers. Right? They could be version 1 through N. But then for Notary V2, V2.5, whatever, we may have to come up with a directory structure saying, here's how we segment these. I wouldn't expect to see them all in the same directory.
Yeah, they will not be in the same directory. Yeah, right now, actually, we have them in the same directory, which is becoming confusing because we should start putting like signature specifications in one place, and
agree.
so on. Yeah, but they will be in the same repository. That's what you're saying.
Yes, I think that's the right thing to do.
Okay. Okay. Let me just make sure I capture the notes. Sorry about that. Oops. Okay. So you're saying that I think we need to be crispy clear what kind of specifications we will put here. So I can take a step, or like Sabir, you can take a step on that if you want to, as a issue that we can file to have this discussed for the retirement and what to name it, like the new repositories.
Now, this has to be done, this renaming and or creating a new repo has to be done before 1.0, right?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, but we need to file an issue, put it for a kind of a discussion, at least a couple of days, have feedback from other folks. And at the end of the day, we need also a full agreement, majority agreement from the organization maintainers.
That's fair.
So the next thing, go ahead.
Just to finish the topic, right? Because we will not have time to, or we should not go back and rewrite our previous meeting minutes from last year, where we were still using the term we are no longer going to use. I think we need to write, we need to acknowledge that for a while we were calling it this, but going forward we'll be calling it this.
Yes,
so
that's a very good point.
We have to acknowledge to any casual reader saying, wait a minute, I was used to. Okay.
And we need not only to acknowledge, we need agreement with all the maintainers that this is how we're going to go forward.
Yes. So the broad agreement is we still stay this other repo under the Notary project. We just create it to be more name appropriate and deprecate the existing one, which causes confusion.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to call it notation specs because somebody can use these specifications for other uses as well, not just for making a, or just for notation. Okay.
Yes, so the idea is that actually I can go and, let's say, write a tool in Python, which is called something else, not notation, but let's say PODIS registry tool, and I can use this specification to implement either verification of Notary project signature or signing with a Notary project signature.
Okay, so while we are there, you said something I want to go back, because in our initial requirements or goals, we had discussed that notation or Notary project signature specification can be used to sign non-OCI artifacts as well. Is that something we should acknowledge now, or we just bring it later saying there's no reason why the signature spec can't be used for some non-registry artifact as well?
I'm not sure whether we need to acknowledge it before 1.0, but I certainly think that we need to have a specification that says, well, we have the specification of the signature and the envelopes. Now, how do we use these signatures for non-OCI artifacts? I certainly believe that we need to do that. I am not sure whether it's blocking something for 1.0, because this is, I guess, how our project evolves.
Yes. I was just thinking a simple line, maybe saying currently these specifications are focused for OCI registries. In future. So we signal that this is just not for OCI registries only. In future,
how about coming back to what Roy said? We have a separate folders, and we can have a README in each individual folder what kind of specifications are contained in the folder.
That's fair.
Okay. I think let me document that because I'm pretty sure I'll forget it. Just going forward. So how are we running on time?
We're good. We have 20 minutes left.
Okay. I'll put like Roy. Also is to create separate folders and have README. Roy, I'll credit you with that idea. In each folder for what specifications it contains. We have OCI, but in the future we will have non-OCI. Have signing of non-OCI artifacts. Okay, good. I think that's pretty good progress what we are making. Any other comments on this particular kind of notary project and specification repository and security audits and the threat model? Samir, Roy?
I did have one, which is, Samir, did we ever document what we would, the policy we took for COSI for going forward, i.e. we had to have a library, a couple of different penetration testings to accept any new crypto or security items? Like, did we ever formalize it?
I believe that is the formalize the signature specification where we will say what will it take for us to bring in any other signature format.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the open item we still have.
Okay. So we still have to finish that off and say, here's their public statement.
Yes, as to what will a signature format has to be before we will admit it.
There is another. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Roy.
There was some other open questions for OpenSSF as to what the guidelines we want to have for maintainers on open source security projects. Like, can you adopt something that has a single maintainer is an interesting question.
Oh, I don't think so. We captured that in that one. I think we should go and add it right now while we're in this meeting. If we open the PR going up.
So what is that? Can you, I'm not sure I understand what.
So if we found a Rust COSI implementation, would we take a dependency on it if it only had one maintainer? One human maintainer? Like, what is the policy from a governance for security type open source?
Dependency on implementation from other OSS projects.
If we were going to talk about this, the interesting question would be, it is fine to have a single maintainer or primary maintainer, but there has to be a succession plan if the guy gets run over by a bus.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Okay. Yeah, we need to document that one. Guess I didn't share my screen. Can you guys see my screen right now?
We can see it now. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Zoom is very confusing with the number of windows that you need to monitor on the screen. Anything else around those two, notary project specification and security?
No.
So I have one more thing that I think it's important for the governance that we've kind of been discussing from time to time, but we haven't completed on that. And I do not believe that actually it's blocking for 1.0. But having in mind that we want to do this retire the notary project repository, right? At the minimum, we need to put some guidelines. What is the process for really? With retire, I mean archive. Let me be completely clear here. So archive, not delete. So we need to figure out what is the process for archiving the repositories. The example here is like we need to archive the notary project, but we have also TIFF repository, which actually has no activity for, last I checked, I think 2 years. And also the notary, the actual notary TIFF implementation repository also is not very highly maintained. Now, I know that Docker still relies on that, so we need their kind of weigh in on the notary one, but the TIFF is, I don't think anybody is actually using it. And the maintainer on the TIFF repository, or one of the maintainers on the TIFF repository, she is not actually participating in this project for more than 2 years. So that brings kind of the questions like process for archiving repositories and process for really removing maintainers and putting them in emeritus status for the project or for the particular repository. So those are kind of the two things that we don't have clearly defined in the governance. And we need to actually, once again, I don't think it's blocking for 1.0, but very shortly after 1.0, we need to have this process defined. Samir, what's your thought?
Yeah, I agree. I think that process needs to be in place, and we have all the right building blocks for it. We have individual repo level maintainers that we can reach out, and then the org level maintainers can make a decision saying, hey, the individual repo level maintainers have this proposal, we have evaluated it, and this is the way we want to go, or we are not getting a response for the individual repo level maintainers, so let's archive it for that reason.
Okay, and so we not blocking for 1.0.0 release, but let's maybe put a timeline for that and say, I don't know, we want to do it if we release in one of the things I'm struggling, if we do that as 1.0 release, we need to maybe have the process for archiving repository at least defined and agreed upon before 26th.
Yes, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Okay.
as we archive this and move the specs, we need to be careful about moving them in place and then making any changes after we move them. Like, we don't want to be making changes as they are moving. I want to make sure.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we want to actually complete the specs and move them after that? So we need to complete the specs for the release, so we can do the move to the new repository the day before the release.
I think we should think about that. The reason I'm saying is, if we move it first and then make the changes, that will show activity in that repo as well. And I think I don't have a strong opinion, but I will lean on moving first and then making any remaining changes there.
Okay.
That will be my
at that minimum,
yeah.
I think we need to get the PRs that are open right now closed, because we will lose those. Okay.
Because there's one change I want to make to the specs, which is very confusing. In our requirements, we have been calling it key management, but we do, or Notary project has taken a different stance. We're saying we don't want customers, users to use individual keys, but rather certificates. Even if they are chained up to just one root CA directly, or self-signed certificates for our demo. I think that's a very very important change, which our specs today do not explicitly state. So that's one big change I want to make, which will make probably changes in more than one spec and readmes. This is the same feedback I left on your PR as well, the one you created in the .github repo. That key management is also a misnomer.
Yes, that is fair. Actually, I saw somewhere your comment about that. Okay. Okay. Last but not least, and actually we are almost out of time, is we need to have PRs for updating the READMEs on each individual repository with clear statement what the repositories are for. So
yes,
my PR will not be enough in the GitHub repository to add this clarity. So we need to go and update each individual README and close them before the 1.0 release.
Completely agree. Completely agree with that. Because people might not even go to the GitHub repo; they might directly go to the code repo or the. Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, I think that's everything I had about this, and I think it was very productive work that we did today, Samir. I will work with E to actually get all the items filed. The number of where did my plan went? Anyways.
Yeah, that will increase. I think the number of open PRs or issues will increase.
And issues will increase, but the good news is that we have a plan, and I feel confident that we can execute on that for the next less than 2 weeks that we have right now.
Can I suggest one more action item that we can take today while we have this plan in motion? So I think that open PR on the open or the issue. I think the issue number is what's the issue number?
On which repository?
Let me think which repo I'm talking about. Where we have to do the naming, the notation naming, issue number 244 in the Notary project. Issue number 244 in the Notary project. Let's put our intent there so that anybody who has given us feedback there quickly sees as to where we are headed, and then they can say whether it's Emily, whether it's Matt, whether it's Brendan.
Yep.
So they can quickly see what we have proposed in this meeting, and if they have a strong input on that, they can give to us right away.
Let me add this to the notes.
Do you want to do that so that they can respond to it before we?
I will. So my day is back to back, but I will try to get this latest by noon tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine. Because this is the one that the CNCF-TOC created on us. So we tell them here's the action we are taking.
Okay. I will, as I said, so if I find time today, I will do it today. If not, latest by tomorrow noon, it will be done. Okay.
And I will work on closing the reviews open for us and ping Pritish and Niaz and others to close their PRs. Okay, thanks so much. Oleg.
Thanks, Amir. Really appreciate your help with this. Thanks, Roy, Rosalind. Have a nice day.
Yeah, everybody have a nice day.
Bye. Have a nice day, everyone.